Sean, we see a lot of golfers come in looking for more distance with their driver, but we see a number of golfers, especially if you're newer to the game or maybe have been playing the game a long time, but are lacking that distance with your irons, right? We want to show you some ways in today's video how you can not only, this will transfer to the driver too, but how you can really start to generate some club head speed and hit these irons farther, higher, and more accurately. Sean, let's talk about some ways that we see golfers every day who are otherwise have a pretty good understanding of the game, but are doing certain things in their swings or trying to do certain things in their swings that are really costing them distance with their irons.
Yeah, I think a lot of these issues have to do with just concepts as they have around the golf swing. And you know, one of them for beginners is if you just first pick up a club, a lot of times it makes sense in their mind to take the club straight back and try to swing it straight through in order to hit the ball straight. And not only does that cost them distance, it costs them accuracy as well. They just don't understand that the swing needs to move around me in more of an arc.
Right, so it kind of makes sense, right? If I swing it like my target straight at the camera, but if I swing it more like a Ferris wheel, then that'll make the ball go straighter. But it's not really how the club's designed. It's not really how the body's designed to do that. We want to have that kind of incline plane, we'll call it, right? That sheet of glass that the club moves up on an angle, back down on an angle, kind of like the slope of a roof.
Yeah, like a pitch of a rooftop.
Yep, and if we can start moving the club and really grasping that concept, making the club and the body move so that club moves up and down that rooftop, then you're going to have the opportunity to get the face working correctly to really start to add distance to your irons.
Absolutely, and we'll have another drill in the drills section, but a good way to kind of think about this, if Mike put his hand up like this, like a tabletop, if I was going to hit a ball off that tabletop, the golf swing would be very simple. I would just turn back and turn through, and anybody could help me, because if I did this or I did this, the person helping me would say, hey, no, just kind of go around on a level angle. Well, the golf swing, if I just do this and bend forward like I'm hitting the ball and make that same motion, that's the start of a pretty good golf swing.
That's exactly right. So it can be that simple of a concept to, and we'll show you some drills here in a second, of making sure that your body's on board to make the club move that way.
Exactly.
Right? You got to have the right concept, but then you got to also have the movements that allow all that to happen.
Yeah, so let's go over and look at some gear swings, kind of look at how this club moves around us, or the golfer, and how the pivot works to make that happen.
Right.
Now that you know that the swing should be on a circular arc, let's use Gear's 3D motion capture to really highlight that motion in a major champion. What you see here is a little different look than what you may be used to when it comes to the golf swing. You're not going to see anything like this on TV. We have removed the golfer completely and highlighted the path at the middle of the grip and club take throughout the golf swing. As we get the club moving here, notice how circular the hands move around the body on a tilted angle. We can also see here from the face-on view something similar. The hand path you see on the screen is still a circle, but it shifts forward on the downswing due to the body shifting and not pulling the hands in close to the body. And that's something that we see a lot. Golfers thinking that they need to pull the hands toward the body on the downswing. You don't want to do that. You want to use the shifting of the body and keep the hands wide in order to make this circle look like the way it does here on the screen. Although they work on slightly different planes, the concept of getting the hands and club to move in this manner is something we've used to help thousands of golfers simplify the golf swing. The priority here is to get the hands working on the right path first, then it becomes much easier to get the club motion correct. The circular motion you see here from both face on and down the line allow the club to work in the way it was designed and allows for maximum club head speed. And as a bonus, you also get the club moving on the correct path through impact. Now let's turn on the club extension line. This amounts to a laser that points out the end of the club that you can see now on the screen. This allows us to see where the end of the club is pointed throughout the swing. Now this is a topic that confuses many golfers, and we get asked all the time, where should this club be or point throughout the swing? Now let's play this swing through so you can notice where the club points at the different stages. The first thing we hear when we show this to students is that they are surprised that there is no large shallowing move in transition that we hear that online today has become fairly popular, especially when they hear that the player on the screen is one of the longest and straightest ball strikers on the tour. So hopefully now you understand two key concepts. You know that the hand path is not overly complicated. It's basically a hula hoop tilted at an angle. and you know the end of the club is pointed somewhere near the target line or parallel to the target line as it swings back and through. And it doesn't need to have any extreme plane shifts in any direction. So now that you know how the hands and club move, let's look at the body and help tie this all together. In order to get the hands, arms, and club working properly, you want to have a solid pivot. And your pivot will drive everything we just saw with the arms and club. The most important part of that pivot is the engine, and that's your legs and hips. As a golfer on the screen gets started here, notice what's happening right off the bat. It's a slight shift of the center of the pelvis away from the target before the takeaway is over. This is going to help ensure that you get the proper tilts in your pivot as you start back. And what we normally see with golfers who try to just rotate on the backswing is an overly flat pivot and an over rotation. The problem with this, it'll send your hands way too far inside too early in the backswing, destroying your circle. The 50,000 foot view here with the pivot, and what we want you to understand is that the pivot is a shift, turn, shift, turn. Now let's look at the second shift turn of that equation. Notice here in the second half of the backswing, while he's still rotating close, the body starts to drift forward. This is what we've coined recentering. This is what gets the face-on downswing hand pass shifting forward, which will help give you compression and speed. Now, if there is a pro move that you should be copying, this is it. So let's sum it up. Good hand path and club movements are probably a lot more simple than what you've been trying to do. And the shift, turn, pivot is what will tie it all together for longer and more compressed shots.
All right, Sean, we've seen what good players do and we see what should happen now. Now let's talk about ways to make it happen. So we're going to break this down into a body pivot drill and then kind of the club drill and the shape of the overall shape of the motion of the club.
Perfect.
All right, so let's start with the body. So what's a good pivot drill to learn how to hit these irons better distances?
Okay, so the main drill that we like to use is just the arms crossed pivot drill. You can have the club pointer here out to your left side. And the idea is kind of twofold. One is to learn how to make kind of a centered pivot going back, right?
Now by centered, we see a lot of golfers think they're making a centered pivot. They're actually moving forward. Let's make sure we define that centered pivot.
We want to keep the upper body and the lower body basically on top of each other as you go back.
So I'm not going to lean the upper body away.
Yep.
And we're not going to throw the hips forward.
Yeah,
right?
and when you add the arms, there's a little shifting that goes into the backswing. But for this drill, just to keep it simple, just kind of a turn in place. And when you do that, your knees will change and you'll get some tilt to this shoulder plane.
Right.
Okay,
we don't want that flat.
No, you don't. This would be kind of the wrong way to do it, and that would cause the arms to even lift more, like we talked about that we don't want to do. The next piece of it is to learn to have some shift into the lead side, and to stand up tall in the finish, right?
Yep.
What a lot of people start doing, they've been taught to keep their head down, and they start looking like this, and that's a disaster when you add the club in your hand. So it's turn, then imagine an imaginary wall here. I'm going to put my belt buckle into. I'm going to turn my, let me do it like this. Let me turn my belt buckle into the wall. So my belt buckle is going to go up and forward, just like that. So that's the body motion part of the drill.
Let's tile that together. So let's go face on. And we like doing the arms crossed when you're learning this because it really isolates what the body does.
You start adding the club and the ball and all bets are off if you're trying to learn something.
Right, so let's talk about the timing and sequencing because you said there was a recentering and then a move forward. So let's talk about that.
So I'm going back here on the backswing. I'm going to kind of back myself in a little. I'm staying turned as I shift forward a little bit. And then I'm putting my belt buckle into this imaginary wall here.
So you should see some flow. When you're doing this in front of a mirror, and it's a great way to do it, you should see a little bit of flow to this, right? Here, back, and then through. We don't want to go wooden, and then through or anything like that. We want to get to where there's some flow and some rhythm.
Yeah, you can start kind of speeding it up. And at first, if you have to, just chunk the backswing and then back in a little and go up and then just slowly, like Mike said, add some flow to it.
Right, because the more efficient we make this movement, the tighter and more just in sync and flow the rest of this movement, the faster you're going to be able to move. And again, that's adding speed to the end result, which is the shot.
Yeah.
Okay, now we've got some medical tape, and this you could use an ace bandage for this. It's a great way to use that. And explain how you have this set up here on the ground.
So I use this with beginners a lot, and even good players that kind of just lose concept of what they're trying to do. I just have it in a little bit of a arc here on the ground.
Okay.
So in golf, we don't swing the club in a straight line, so this is a good descriptive image on the ground of how this club comes down from the inside, hits the ball, and then goes up from the inside again and creates this kind of circle around the body. Sometimes having that image there is really helpful. And the nice thing about this is you always want to feel like you're hitting the ball on the back side of this circle, especially for a little bit of a draw, which a lot of you would love to have, especially as a beginner. If you get things out of sort and your pivot is bad and you kind of are backing up on your back foot, you'll end up catching the ball way up here on the front side of this circle and start hitting pulls and slices.
Now, what he means by that back side of the circle, let's say this is my target line, and you've got this arc underneath it, which is what our bandage here is doing. You want to hit it just past the apex of that arc.
Yeah, that's right.
Right?
That's
so that's
right.
the back side of the circle.
Yeah, so I'm hitting down, and from the back side of the circle, this ball will draw a little, and then the club starts going around the corner, creating that kind of circle that we talked about up here, right? This would be the basic kind of golf swing motion. Lower that down and just hit a little chippy one. Feeling that? And although I went around in a circle, the ball goes dead straight or even has a little draw.
Right, if you kind of get the feeling that you might be hitting this, that's an indication that you know your swing is too straight up, straight down kind of movement. You want to have a little bit of that plane to it.
Yeah, and you know, even for better players that start getting going this way,
Right.
this is a pretty good image just to remember that the club is, you swing the golf club from inside to inside.
Yeah, anything visual that you can put on the ground or alignment sticks that really kind of create somewhat of a visual barrier for you, you're going to pick up these concepts, and more importantly, you're going to feel these movements much faster. So give both of these drills a try. You're going to start hitting your irons much farther now because you're going to be moving more efficiently and on plane and in a better motion.
And hey, if you want to add instant distance to your drive, and we all do, everybody wants more distance, go ahead and click the link in the pinned comment below. You're going to see a link. Click on it. It's going to take you to a page. You're going to enter your name and email address. We're going to send you an email where you're going to get access to Instant Distance, which is a video training that we put out. We know it's going to help you. We know we're going to see you farther down the fairway.